I'll record on this computer, share, and from beginning, we will have the slideshow. Okay, so this is the slideshow to teach you about the Student Action on Canadian Water Attitudes competition. So what we usually used to do is we split it up into different webinars, but now we're going to have this as all one webinar, all of the steps. So it might be a little bit much to take in. So I'm not going to go over everything in super detail. So we're going to be having a recording of this webinar, and also the PowerPoint will be up on the Student Action Competition webpage. So if you need to refer back to anything, the PowerPoint will be up there. Okay. So we are a registered charity. We became one in 1998. And we send water testing kits to schools, and we have other water education programs. If you were one of the lucky first 10 schools that registered to compete, then you'll be receiving 2 elementary or 1 high school Operation Water Drop kit in March.
I was number 11.
Oh, number 11. Oh, shoot.
It's all good.
We do have some more funding coming in to send kits to schools across Canada, so you might get some that way.
Okay, cool.
So you said you're teaching grade 5, and I haven't got a response from the Sylvia person. Oh, hi.
Hi.
Hi. You're there now, and where are you from?
George Gordon Education Center.
Oh, George
Saskatchewan.
Gordon. Okay, great. Were you one of the lucky first 10?
Yes.
Oh, great. So you'll be getting kits in March. So are you there with your students, or is it just
Yes,
you?
we are.
Oh, okay, cool.
Hi. Hi.
Hello. And what grade are those students in?
Grade 7.
Oh, grade 7, grade 5? Don't know what grade you're in, or it's a mixed class?
7.
7? Okay. So you're both in the B, the 5 to 8. Yeah, don't worry about that. I know that, so that's fine. So the one school is located in Ontario. You said Guelph, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so Guelph, so close to Toronto, kind of the GTA area, I believe.
Yeah.
And the other one is in Saskatchewan, which is in George Gordon First Nation, which is a First Nations community that is close to Punachai, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So kind of, is that central Saskatchewan?
I guess.
Yeah.
Yes. South Central.
Okay, so the competition is going to allow students to investigate, educate, and report on a water issue in their community. And it's open to K-12 students across Canada. And the first 10 schools get kits, so George Gordon School is lucky. And the project must take place in Canada, which I guess is good because it would probably be hard and expensive to take place somewhere else. And the prizes will be a water bottle filling station for your school, a commemorative plaque, and maybe some additional water testing kits and a reusable water bottle. So it's going to be a $3,000 prize package. So we made it that way so that the school can for sure get a water bottle filling station and commemorative plaque. So then if there's money remaining, then you can choose water testing kits or reusable water bottles or a combination of both. And there will be one winning school from kindergarten to grade 8 and one from grade 9 to 12. So the steps in the competition is what we're going to be going over today. So the first thing to do is to think about a topic. So think, do many people in your community leave the tap on when they brush their teeth? Are people taking showers that are too long? What do you see happening in your homes and in your community? And then you're going to think about what questions you would ask in order to get information about this. So you might want to survey first and then decide on your topic later, or you might want to decide on your topic and then do the survey. So if you know of an issue that's happening in your community in terms of people wasting water, you might just decide to focus on that and then do a survey asking people like, how long do you shower? Do you leave the tap on when you brush your teeth? Things like that. Or you might want to ask a variety of questions about ways that people waste water and then see what comes out in the survey data. You can also tackle more than one thing. So you can tackle, for example, having shorter showers and turning the tap off when you brush your teeth. So you can tackle more than one. And one thing that you must include in your survey is where your community's water comes from, because a lot of people in Canada don't know where their community's water comes from. Sorry, just a second. And the really interesting thing about that is that, you know, you can't really value water to conserve it or to protect the source if you don't know where it's coming from. So the thing is that I've gone to some elementary schools in Saskatoon, and I found out that sometimes less than 5% of the students know where their water comes from. So after you do the survey, the next thing that you'll do is inform the community. So for example, if you found out that people are leaving the tap on when they brush their teeth, and they're also taking too long of showers, then you might want to give them some tips in how to take shorter showers and remind them to turn the tap off when they brush their teeth. So you might want to give them specific steps, like, you know, wet your toothbrush, then turn the tap off, then put the toothpaste on, so on and so forth. For example, for showers, you might want to say, you know, you don't have to wash your hair every time you shower. Actually, hairdressers say that's better, so, you know, maybe wash your hair every other time, or, you know, maybe use leave-in conditioner or something like that. So are there any questions at this point? So then, after you educate the community, you would then do a follow-up survey to see whether attitudes and behaviors have changed, and then you would gather all your data and you would write the report, which will be on that same student action competition webpage on our website. And based on those reports, a class in K to 8 and a class in 9 to 12 will win the prize in the competition. So are there any questions about what I've said so far?
Nope, sounds good.
Okay, so we're going to go over each step in a little bit more detail. So picking a topic, so discover an issue. So you need to think about like the local bodies of water and their uses. So maybe, for example, there's a beach area by the river here in Saskatoon, and often people leave garbage right around there. So obviously when the water level comes up, that's going to pollute the source water because it's going to get washed into the river. So you might want to think about how people use the river or how people use the body of water, things like that, like boats and stuff. And you might want to also contact environmental groups or watershed authorities in your area and ask them, like, do you know what issues are happening in terms of water in our community? Think about where the water you use comes from and what happens to it before it comes to your house and what happens after it leaves. So other things that you could tackle are things like reminding people, you know, like the Yellowfish Road thing, not to put things down the drain there because it goes directly into the river. You could also, you could like talk about what in your community is wasting water. So are people watering at the wrong time? Are people taking too long of showers, things like that? How are the people wasting water? How are they polluting the water? So do you already have an idea in mind for your project? So are you already thinking like people in our community do this wrong, or they're polluting the source water this way, or they are wasting water that way? Any ideas?
We have a Nestle water bottling plant in our community, right down the street from my school, actually. So I'd probably make it around plastic water bottles versus reusable water bottles. Yeah,
that's a very good idea. And it's very interesting, and it will definitely be a good part to put in your project. One of the things that you'll be evaluated on, however, is water conservation. So you can definitely do that, but you'll also need to add in something about conserving water, like turning the tap off when they brush their teeth or shorter showers or something like that. I know one school in Saskatoon, what they did in terms of reusable water bottles is they realized that everybody basically doesn't finish their water bottle. Like they fill it up in the morning and then they take it home after school and then they dump it out and they clean the bottle or whatever. So what they decided to do is, instead of having that like third or half of a liter dumped out into the sink each day, is use it to like water plants, or, you know, drink it, or to use it like for whatever else they need to do with water, or to not fill it up all the way. in the first place. So that's an idea related to reusable water bottles, but it probably wouldn't conserve like a lot of water, but could definitely be a part of your project. But I would also recommend something like shorter showers because it makes a big impact in the water conservation.
Right.
One thing that we're dealing with in our community is that, there might be leaky toilets or leaky taps, which might be a little bit kind of out of our scope, but we could nevertheless bring awareness to that issue.
Yeah, definitely. So in terms of leaky toilets, I know that if you put a little bit of food dye into the, like food coloring into the tank, you can see if there is a leak. And then, yeah, you would probably need a plumber to fix it, which can be expensive.
Right. Yeah, that sort of becomes a whole public works thing in our community. But another project or thing that I've heard about is putting a 2-liter pop bottle or even a 1-liter into the toilet tank. And that way, when your toilet tank fills up and you're not using as much water per flush.
Yeah, we definitely have that as an idea in this presentation. And the school that won in BC, our first national competition about 4 years ago, they were doing toilet tank bags. So they partnered with, I think it was a local watershed group or environmental group, and they got a bunch of toilet tank bags and they were handing them out at their local stores and things like that.
Neat.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's definitely something that they can do. Although I don't know how helpful that is if the toilet's like leaking a whole bunch or so. Yeah, wasting a bunch of water.
Right. Yeah.
But if the toilet's working fine, then that's a way that, yeah, you can conserve water. So potential projects could be turning off the tap when you brush your teeth or wash your hands. Personally, I know I'm guilty of that. I don't turn the tap off when I wash my hands. I do when I brush my teeth, but something that maybe I should think about and work on. Reducing time for showers. Don't run the dishwasher or washing machine until it's full. It's actually better to fill up the sink with water instead of washing dishes with the tap running. So here's where it talks about the half-gallon jug of water in the toilet tank. Watering outdoor plants in the morning because you don't want to water them in the heat because then it'll just evaporate and it won't do what you're trying to do. Use less electricity. It takes thousands of gallons of water to cool down a power plant. So some questions to consider are: what are some causes of water pollution? Where does the water come from? What needs to happen for the water to be drinkable? And in terms of energy consumption, how energy use affects our environment, how much energy is required to treat and distribute a liter of water. So I would say basically the core parts of your project need to be educating people about where their water comes from and surveying them before and after you educate them to see whether they know where their water comes from before and after you teach them, and also conserving water. That's where most of your points or marks are going to come from. But when you do other things as well, like educating about energy in the environment or educating about bottled water versus reusable water bottles, that's also definitely part of the project. Are there any questions about that part?
No, I wanted to double check one thing, what you said earlier. Like plastic, when I talked about the plastic water bottles and versus reusable, and you said that I'll need to choose something else that's more water conservation related. Like plastic, I think it's very water conservation related because it takes 3 liters of water to make 1 plastic bottle.
Oh, yeah, that's very true. So you could do it as water conservation that way. Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I just wanted to double check.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I usually think in terms of the water bottles more like oil. Like we have a picture in our bottled water fact sheet about the amount of oil that it takes to ship the water.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely plastic. Like there's virtual water in everything. Like you can look up, in your food and stuff, how much water it takes to make it. So survey and gathering data. So there's questions and answers that you ask people, obviously the questions, and you get their data. So once you've chosen the topic, it's time to take a survey. So you'll conduct a survey to see what your community knows about the issue. And like I said, you can do this the other way around. So if you don't know of an issue or if you don't discover an issue in your community, you could survey people first on a variety of things to see what the issue is. And then you're going to conduct a follow-up survey after you educate your community to see how you changed attitudes and behaviors. And you can also have other surveys if you want to conduct further research. So you're not limited to only having one initial survey, but you must have at least one initial survey and one follow-up survey. And these questions will help you learn what attitude your community has on the issue. So these are different ways that you can ask questions. So you definitely want the questions to be easy to answer in a few words. You don't want people to have to, write you an essay about what they think about water. So yes or no or short answer questions, like how many minutes is your average shower, or do you turn the tap off when you brush your teeth? Do you buy bottled water? How many bottles of water do you buy per week? Specific, so do you leave the tap on while brushing your teeth or washing your hands? And every group will have different questions depending on their issue, but all surveys must ask, from where does your water come? So that's a necessary part. So who should you ask? You should ask your friends and family. You should maybe go next door to the other grade classroom and ask them, survey them. This isn't something that I want students to do door to door and talking to strangers. We don't want to do anything like that. That could be potentially dangerous. So friends, family, you can have your friends and family ask their friends and family, but it's just a little bit trickier because you have to follow up with the same people who you initially surveyed. So you have to make sure that you can for sure survey those people again. You can also pass out a survey at a school assembly and survey the entire school.
So are we just surveying adults, and can we do a telephone survey?
You can survey adults and you can survey youth. And yet you can do a telephone survey, but yeah, just phone people who you know.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So you can send out an email. You can do like a Google form. So you could have a Google form and an email where people click on the link to fill out the survey. You could have paper copies, like that might work well at an assembly, for example, or visiting from classroom to classroom. You could go up to your friends and family and ask them questions, or yeah, you could also phone them. So the baseline data, so can you get a few specific answers to show a difference in attitude? So you want to know if they know where their water comes from. And if, for example, you decide to tackle length of showers, then you want to know how long is their current average shower. If you're tackling bottled water, you might want to ask how many bottles of water do you purchase per week. If you're tackling the toilet tank bags, you might ask them to count how many times per week the toilet's flushed in their home or something like that. So what do you do with the answers you get from the survey? So you make sure that your first survey gathers all the required information so you can report accurately on the change in attitude. And every project has to ask from where your water comes from and record how many people have the correct response. And then you educate them about the location of their water source, and don't just name it. So don't just be like this river, like for example in Saskatoon, South Saskatchewan River, but talk about, what is affecting the water. So like the beach areas and people littering, and the drains go, like the drains at the corner, the grates, they go directly to the river. So if people dump things down there, or if there's garbage on the sidewalk and then the rain comes and it washes garbage into the sewage gutter part. So encourage them to care. So talk about how much water is drawn from the source and what might pollute the source water. You want people to care about where their water comes from, to protect source water. And then you ask the question again at the end of your project to see how the number has changed. So for example, in the first survey, we saw that 60% of people knew where their water comes from, but at the end, 90% knew where their water comes from.
Hey, Nicole, quick question. Did you may have already said this, but what's the minimum number of people that you're hoping we survey, combined, youth and adult?
No, I haven't said that. Basically, you want to get out to as many people as possible. You're going to be rated in terms of the number of people. We have a rubric set up, so the more people, better. In terms of how you're going to be judged on that, there are objective categories that the staff, like myself and my assistant, will be marking, and those will be like ranges of people, the number of people, and then there will also be subjective categories that the volunteer judges will be marking. So for example, like if you really made a good impact in your community and went out to a lot of people. So I guess the more the better, but don't talk to strangers, kids.
Now, do we get that rubric ahead of time?
No, I don't usually share that rubric ahead of time.
Okay, so we don't know what like a level 4 would look like for a number of people.
No, yeah, I don't do that because I figure if someone's like, well, you know, if I just fudge this number a little bit, I'll get the other mark. It was really close. So I haven't been sharing the rubrics ahead of time.
It can make a difference, I think, community to community. And you know, the size of your school or whatever, that's going to impact how many people you're going to be able to survey.
Yeah, how many people in your community. That being said, like you don't have to restrict it to only your community, so you're definitely welcome to like talk to a school the next school over. You're definitely welcome to survey aunts and uncles who maybe live in Saskatoon or something if you're doing something about like shorter showers. So there are ways that you can get out to a lot of people. You don't have to restrict it only to your community.
Okay.
All right.
And in terms of where your water comes from, then you would be asking them where their water comes from. So if they're in Saskatoon, you're expecting the answer South Saskatchewan River. And so that might mean that you might have to educate different people about different sources of water. Like maybe you get your community water from a well, but then someone's aunt gets their community water from the river. So then they phone or email them and chat to them about the river. So for example, if someone knows that you are trying to get people to conserve water by taking shorter showers or turning off the tap when brushing their teeth, they may not tell the truth. So don't tell them ahead of time, you know, we're asking you this because we want you to conserve water. Just kind of ask it as a general question. And if maybe there's even ways to disguise it further. So for example, if your school wants to know some other, you know, information, you know, maybe you can add some random survey questions just so that they don't know what you're getting at. So have your school put out an announcement to ask the students to time how long their showers are, but don't tell them why you need to know. Visit other classrooms at your school, give them a paper survey to complete that asks them how much time they spend in the shower per day, whether they have a low flow shower head and from where their water comes, calculate the average to get a representation of the school. That's your baseline data. So you need to educate people on the effects of using a lot of water and how they can use less, and inform them about the source of the water and how it can be protected, and ask them how they have taken action by taking shorter showers or turn the tap off or things like that. So I'm not going to go too much in detail about this baseline data. This is important data to keep track of for the report, but obviously you're not going to memorize this all right now. And like I said, the PowerPoint will be up on that student action competition webpage. Okay. But in terms of the question about whether you can ask adults or only adults or adults and youth, yes, but we're going to separate them into age 0 to 21 and 22 and older, just to see if you're educating a lot of youth and adults or a variety. And then the number of webinars you attended, number of students who attended the webinars. If you get volunteers involved, like maybe you can get some parents involved or people from local companies who volunteer or general community members. And you might be able to form some formal or informal partnerships. So for example, with watershed groups or your tribal council or your like environmental groups, things like that. So there's also lots more important data to keep track of. So the number of events you held to educate people, So in one way, for example, when we were talking about your community being fairly small, but someone phoning up their aunt, well, that's maybe not like a whole community event, but that is an educational event, them phoning or emailing their aunt. So maybe you'd have more of those. You'd have a higher number of educational sessions, basically. The number of people you educated and the number of people you surveyed and the percentage of survey respondents who were correct when they responded to the first survey about where their water comes from and the last survey. Take pictures, shoot a video. You can submit up to 12 photos in one video that is 5 minutes in length or shorter. So some possible research. So you might want to include some facts in your presentation. You might want to include guidelines for Canadian drinking water quality. You might want to include how much water it takes to have a 15-minute shower versus a 7-minute shower, things like that. And it might help your community understand the impact that a certain action has on the environment and water resources. And educating the community about potential benefits, like how much water can be saved in a year, will help them understand how much of an impact they can make. Are there any questions about that part?
Nope, sounds good. What are the final deadlines?
We don't have it set specific, like a specific date yet, but probably early to mid-May.
Okay.
Will be the deadline for the report. Yeah, there's only the one deadline for the report. And you would email the pictures and the video to me at the same time that you submit that. So educating the community. So what does your data say? So you will develop a plan best suited to your baseline data. So for example, if you saw that, 75% of people leave the tap on when they brush their teeth, well, that's a great place to target. So you'd have a lot of water conservation if you changed all those people's behaviors. If most of your community doesn't know where their water comes from, you could focus on that. So you will earn points for different things, and depending on how much time you have and how much attention your audience is going to pay, you might have to focus on one thing or the other, or cover both. It's up to you in terms of what you think they really need to learn. Like if 90% of them already know where their water comes from, then you probably don't need to worry too much about that. Since you're trying to create a quantifiable positive change, you should inform your audience on what actions can create that change. So for example, if you take a 7-minute shower instead of a 15-minute shower, you will save this many liters of water. And I know it depends on the shower head. So you could say like on average, or you could say like with a non-low flow shower head or with a low flow shower head, or you could encourage them to replace their shower head if that's possible for them. So be sure that everyone you educate fills out your survey and establish your baseline data, because that's very important before educating your community. You can't go back and do it afterwards. So once you've educated them, you can't go back and say, oh, I forgot to ask them this question. Their attitudes and behaviors and knowledge have probably already changed, so you need to ask them everything you need to know in the first place. Keep track of everyone who takes the survey, get names or emails. Maybe at the top of the form, have them put their names and their emails on there. I know you might want it to be anonymous, so I don't know how you can really, you might find a way to track it. Like you might, I don't know, give people different numbers or something so that it's more anonymous, so that you can be sure that they will complete the follow-up survey as well. Because you can include their data unless you have their baseline data and their follow-up data. So there are many different ways to reach out to your audience in a fun and informative way, like poster sessions, presentation, mail-outs, videos. Understand your audience, come up with a strategy that will be most interesting to them. So are you mostly educating students or mostly educating parents, or are you getting the general community involved? So there's different ways to get your message out. You could have a formal presentation, so a PowerPoint like this one, or some kind of performance. You could have a play, you could get creative. You're going to be delivering specific information. So you're not going to be saying, if you have a shorter shower, you'll save water. You're going to say, if your shower is shorter by 5 minutes, you will save about this many liters of water, But this one has a time commitment and on a rigid schedule. So, for example, if you're educating mostly students, this might work well because you might be able to have a play at a school assembly, and then maybe the next month you have a PowerPoint or something like that. People can ask questions after the presentation. You could also have a poster session. So you could have each student or each group of students make posters, and then people would come and go. They could have coffee, tea, cookies, and they could visit the different posters, and they could ask the students questions. So it's not a big time commitment of the audience because it's not a specific time and it's not a specific time period. They can just come and go. You can also use more than one method. So you can educate your students with the PowerPoint and with a play or whatever, and then you can also have the posters up and have a community informational night, for example. You can also have a video that you could email out, or you could email the link out to, or you could put it up on YouTube and share that. You can show how actions can be taken to remedy the issue, and that the video could also be shown at an assembly or for family and friends. You can also do it in a less direct way, so you can hand out leaflets or hang posters up. I think that probably the best way would be to combine more than one way. Like if you're going to give them information at the assembly, why not put some posters up that remind them, right? So it's a less direct form of communication. It might be harder for your audience to ask questions, but if it's within your own school and they know which school is doing it, which class and which teacher, they could probably easily still ask questions. But it could be easily ignored, or people forget they have it or lose it, which is why it's important to use multiple methods. So if you hold an event, make sure that the participants fill out one of your surveys before they hear your information. So if you're going to have an event where, for example, you talk about shorter showers or whatever, you're going to have them fill out that survey beforehand, because there's no, well, obviously there is a point in educating people, even if they're not doing the surveys, but you won't get their data unless you do the pre-survey and the post-survey. So that will contribute to your baseline data and increase your sample group, which you want to do because you want to hit high numbers. And afterwards, make sure they complete your follow-up survey to see how attitudes have changed and keep track of who takes your survey. Are there any questions?
Nope, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yep, sounds good.
So follow-up survey. So once you've educated your community, you're going to return to the same people. And again, you can only use their data if you have done the baseline survey on them, educated them, and done the follow-up survey. So you want the same people, so you might need a way of tracking that. I don't know if you want it to be anonymous and you want to somehow deal with numbers and tracking people, or if you don't care about it being anonymous, that you initially surveyed the first time and asked them the same questions to see what they learned. So the follow-up survey, you'll ask the same questions that were on your first survey to see how attitudes and behavior have changed. And you need to ask the same people who took the first survey. And again, like I said, you can only use their data if they take the first survey and they're educated and they take the follow-up survey. And if they did not complete the first survey and they did not see any educational materials, then you could have them participate, but you would need to give them the initial survey and then educate them and then do the follow-up survey. So if someone comes who was never involved before and they're interested, you could still do that. And depending on your topic, it would be difficult to see the change, because if you don't have much time before you do the follow-up survey, they don't have time to change their behaviors, but they might now know where their water comes from. So if you want them for that data. It's important to keep track of everyone who takes the initial survey, and it's only possible to see how attitudes have changed if the participants have completed the first survey, learned, and then do the follow-up survey. If any of those components are missing, you can't use the answers. So again, you can distribute your survey a variety of ways. So you can do that by email. You can have a Google form that you send them the link to. You can have paper copies. You can phone them. You can be face-to-face. So this is data that you need to keep track of. Again, I don't expect you to memorize it right now, so I'm going to have this PowerPoint posted. We have webinars next week, Monday and Friday, and then basically we're going to pick the recording that turned out best and put the recording up, and we're also going to put up the PowerPoint. So that will be the week of February. Oh, what week is that? So it's the 4th, that's the Monday, so it'll be the week of the February 11th, yeah. So that'll be up that week. So those are all important to keep track of to report on the competition. So this is an example of how to calculate percentages. I'm sure that you can teach your students that. That's pretty simple math. I'm actually a high school math teacher, so if you're getting into any kind of complicated calculations or you need help setting up formulas or anything, let me know because I love math. That's why I became a high school math teacher. So here are some questions to remember. So remember, it's not only water conservation that's important, we need to have safe drinking water. So that's why we're also including aspects like source water protection, and, you know, not polluting water, and like learning about the guidelines for Canadian drinking water quality and things like that. What are some causes of water pollution? So think about that. Who uses water before it comes to your home? What needs to happen for the water to be drinkable? Are there any questions?
Nope, that looks good.
At George Gordon, you guys, oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, what were you going to say?
At George Gordon, you guys have a IBRAM system, correct? Your water system?
We have a water treatment plant. We get our water from an underground aquifer. And it's what did you call it?
It's a biological treatment system, integrated biological reverse osmosis membrane treatment system.
Yes.
That was invented by the founder of our organization, Dr. Hans Peterson. And they're in, I don't know, close to 20 communities now, mostly First Nations communities, but they're starting to be installed in rural communities as well. They're all for groundwater, except there's one up north in Saddle Lake in Alberta, and it's surface water. It's the first surface water biological treatment system in the world. I know that your water treatment plant, before you got the IBRAM, couldn't produce safe drinking water. The water treatment plant operator at the time was Bob Pratt. You might know him.
Yep.
And he was really disappointed in not being able to produce safe drinking water for his community members. But then after they got the IBRAM, everything changed. And then I think that's also why you got the pipes to your homes.
Yeah.
Because they were able to save so much money on backwashing and on membrane replacements and on labor and all sorts of things and chemicals. So it's used as a case study for how much money communities save when they get the IBRAM system.
I think you know more about it than I do.
You guys should go visit your water treatment plant.
Oh yes, I have. I have taken classes before, and so these guys will, this class will go as well.
Yeah, it's neat. You get to see the IBRAM system.
Yeah.
So the final report, so once you have finished distributing surveys, gathering data, educating the community, distributing follow-up surveys, and calculating changes in attitudes and behaviors, it's time to write a report about what your topic was, what you did, and the things you found out along the way. So again, I'm not going to expect you to memorize all this at this point. The PowerPoint will be up on that web page. So the kind of criteria that we're judging based on is the number of people involved and the diversity of community involvement. Like, did you involve adults and youth? We used to also split it up to seniors. So we don't do that anymore in terms of the numbers of people, but you can, in your discussion of your project, say, you know, we also educated grandparents, or we went to a community, old people's home or whatever it's called, and educated people or things like that. Whether volunteers were involved, how many people were surveyed, how many people changed their attitudes and actions, how many people know where their water comes from, how many people knew at the start compared to now, all those kinds of things. So basically the numbers that you're going to be getting points for is how many people were involved, and also how many people know where their water comes from and how many liters of water were saved. And then the rest is more of a subjective, like, did you involve other components of water issues? Did you involve a variety of people in your community? Things like that. So at the completion of your project, all that is left is to fill out the final report submission. So complete the online form to submit your report. So it'll be on that web page, the form. It'll be online like you filled out to compete in the competition. So think about other questions, like, of course, your project's going to take place in Canada. So if you had like a student who interviewed an uncle who lives in the States, then unfortunately that data is not included. I mean, you might as well educate him if your student wants to, but it wouldn't be included in the data. Write a description of your action project from beginning to end. Talk about whether your students watched the webinars, which they're doing right now, and how many youth were involved in the implementation. Were any volunteers involved in the implementation? How many people you educated? How many were youth? And how many surveys were distributed? How many people completed each survey? Now, some of this is for points. Some of this is not for points. Some of this is just to report back to our funder, the W. Garfield Weston Foundation. So, for example, Kathy's not with her students right now, but that's fine. There's no extra points for having your students like participate in the webinar, unfortunately for you, Sylvia, but it's fine either way. That's not for points. That's just so that we know and so that our funder knows. And how many community educational events were held and things like that, and partnerships. So what measurable impact was a result of your project? So was the water usage decreased? Were water saving devices installed? Was an impermeable surface made permeable? So that's another direction that you can go in. So for example, you could maybe have, if you had like say a basketball court that was broken up concrete or something, you could get permission, of course, from your school or whatever, and dig that up or whatever and make a garden. Because impermeable surfaces, they block water from infiltrating, and so they can cause more pollution to go into waterways, and they can also cause more flooding issues. So that's a way that you can go to, is that direction. You won't get the points simply for the water devices installed, but you'll get the points for how much water was conserved as a result of that. So we'll need to know the liters of water saved, or the impermeable surface made permeable, how many square meters. That's something that you'd be getting points for. And outline the process you used to calculate the decrease in water usage, the number of water saving devices installed, or the square meters of impermeable surface made permeable. And like I said, if you need any help with the math, let me know. So final report, what did they learn? So what percentage were correct when they responded to the first survey in terms of where their water comes from and the last survey? I'm always surprised that sometimes the numbers aren't that high, even on the last survey. Like really, I think if you really like, bring it home to them and tell them and, show them pictures of where their water comes from. I know that's harder with groundwater. But what an aquifer looks like and things like that, then, I think close to 100% you could probably get. You can email up to 12 photos or a 5-minute video or shorter to my email address, and include your school name when you email that, and ensure that you have all the proper permission forms filled out, because the pictures in the video might be used by us or our funder. So if you need to get release forms or whatever filled out, please email any spreadsheets or tools you created for managing and analyzing your data to me as well with your school name. Are there any questions?
No, sounds good. Once you choose a final deadline, I'm assuming that will be emailed out to all the participants?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. That's a good idea. We would definitely be putting it up on that page. Like, that page is something that you probably want to go back to every couple weeks or so, just to check if there's any more information and stuff like that. We're also going to be having a help webinar, which will be for people to ask questions or discuss their project or whatever. We'll be having a few of those, I believe, in April. So we'll be following up by webinar as well.
Yeah. All right. Sounds good.
So the grand prize, so the winning school will be presented with a grand prize, which will include a water bottle filling station for school and a commemorative plaque. So does anybody have one of these in their school already?
The refilling stations, we've got one, but we have 4 fountains in our school, so I need 3 more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's something that's starting to be installed into schools. Some of them even show you how many bottles it helped eliminate waste from. So that would be especially of interest probably to your school, Kathy, being that they're so close to the bottling plant.
Yep.
And the commemorative plaque. And hopefully we'll also be able to get some representatives either from our organization or from the funder there to do a presentation and things like that. And then if there's money left over from the 3,000, you would get some more water testing kits or some reusable water bottles or some of each. So thank you for joining today and taking part in the competition to raise awareness about water issues. And thank you to the W. Garfield Weston Foundation for its help, for its funding. So the next webinar will be in April, and it will allow you to ask questions, discuss ideas, and get examples. So recordings of the webinars will be available if there's a day that you are unable to attend. So in this case, there's the launch webinars, and then there's kind of the help webinars. So we'll be posting the best recording of each, or for the help, if there's like lots of different questions, then we might post more than one recording. And any information you need will also be on the website there. So like I say, check back every couple of weeks, because anything that we announce will be there for sure. And attending webinars also allows you to chat with us about any immediate questions you have, or if there's anything you are unsure about. You can also bounce around ideas with us at other schools. So there's our contact information if you want to contact me or my assistant, phone, email. So if you want to get in touch with us to get any help with your project, have any questions, need any help with any math stuff.
How many schools approximately participate every year?
Well, this isn't held every year. It was about 4 years ago that we had our last national competition. And it always kind of feels like a funnel, because a lot of schools sign up, and then, you know, a fair number of them will participate in the webinars, and then a bit fewer will you know, start their project, and fewer will finish their project, you know, kind of how it goes.
Right.
Yeah.
And complete the report. So I think when we did the national competition 4 years ago, there were about 6 reports or so that were completed. I think we have about 15 signed up to compete so far this time. And then the ones in between, we had fewer schools, but that's also because the one 2 years ago was only Saskatoon, and the one that we're just finishing up now is only Saskatchewan.
Oh.
Okay, so any final questions?
Not right now, but we have your address there, so.
Yeah, definitely feel free to contact me if you have any questions at any time, or just want to discuss your project or anything like that.
Okay.
Right.
So would you have a sample timeline? Like you think that by this date we should have this done, by this date we should have this done?
Well, I think for each community school, it might be a little bit individual in terms of how when they have time and things like that. But what we used to do is, like for the Saskatchewan competition and all the previous competitions, we, instead of having this one launch webinar, we had each part as a separate webinar. So we had like the finding an issue as a separate one, and so on and so forth. And you can see those recordings on our webpage as well. And we space them usually about 3 weeks apart. So I guess we were trying to help them with each step about 3 weeks apart. Another thing that's good to do is to basically think about May 1st as your deadline date for the report. Not that it is, but just because that's the earliest it might be.
Yes.
And you know, if you need a bit more time, then maybe you'll have a bit more time. And then backtrack from there. So think about how many weeks are between now and May 1st, and then split it up and think about which parts might take you longer to do.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah, feel free to let me know if you have any questions or want to discuss anything at any time. Good luck with starting your projects, and the PowerPoint will be up on our website in a couple weeks or so. And yeah, be sure to check out that webpage every couple weeks or so.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
students.
Oh, you're gone.
Okay, bye.